It is a beautiful day in the Lowcountry, especially right here in Moss Creek. And today we're talking about the latest statistics of the market through the month of July and overall, what's the mood of the market? So let's get after it. All right, so we're hanging out at the Amenity Center here at Moss Creek, this beautiful marina behind us, and we just figured we got to get outside on this beautiful sunshiny day, Chris, to talk about what's going on in the market. As always, once a month we like to bring folks up to speed on what's happening statistically in the market. And instead of looking at the year-to-date comparative data, I just want to look at the July comparative data because, as we've talked about, the second half of last year, it got a little bit quieter. And yet now we're finding that the second half of 2023 is getting a little bit stronger than it was last year. So the data is looking better. In fact, the number of pending sales that happened in the month of July is up 20% compared to just July of last year. Now the number of listings is down about maybe 8% or so, but that's actually a pretty positive figure because we've been dealing with double-digit decline in inventory. So we're starting to see a little bit more inventory come on the market. And the net result of that, cumulatively, in terms of now we're looking at closed sales are only off by about 4% from this time last year in the month of July. So I guess that brings about, like, what's happened in the market? You know, what are the big push and pull of what's happening with both with buyers and sellers? What's the evolution that you're kind of seeing right now? The questions that are coming up, the primary issues that you're seeing.
Well, thanks. I mean, all that you said in addition to that, your prices are kind of holding flat right now. And prices are holding flat right now because we're kind of finding some balance in the marketplace. The kind of the unfortunate thing, though, is we don't have as many transactions that are taking place. So when that happens, even though demand's there amongst the limited inventory, every transaction that takes place has eyeballs on it. Everybody's looking at it. When you have a lot of transactions taking place in a marketplace, the outliers are kind of easily identifiable, and they don't tend to direct or shape a market. But when you just have a few transactions taking place, say in a villa complex or a certain neighborhood, every transaction, people look at it. People use that to base decisions on what they're going to do. Right. So I don't know. That's been kind of interesting to watch. So if something sells too low or something sells way high, it can set unrealistic expectations.
Right. So super noteworthy because you might have someone who's seen maybe in a market where there's a little bit more inventory, somebody comes in and undercuts it a little bit. And now that becomes the new data point. Meanwhile, there could be something else that sells really, really well because that segment of the market really doesn't have much to choose from. And all of a sudden, it's the new data point as a high point, which makes it sort of I feel like we're kind of in a little bit of a mixed messages sort of market right now. In some instances, we've got buyers, and as you're watching this, you might be in that pool. Like, there's just not enough choices right now. Chip, you got to bring us more inventory because we're ready to pounce. We're a cash buyer, we're ready to perform, etc. And they're ready to take advantage of the next thing that comes on the market. Meanwhile, there's actually a little bit of a growing of the overall inventory. So the real question ends up being, why is there some inventory that's out there? We're seeing a buildup of inventory. Why is there some inventory that's actually sitting on the market a little bit longer right now?
Well, the two things, the two drivers is either not priced correctly or the conditions not right.
So if we look at not priced correctly, because this is what I'm seeing too, is that on the buy side, it seems like buyers are looking for some place to hang their hat. A couple of years ago, it didn't matter. There were no comps, right? There was no relevant data. They were just going to buy it just to buy it. Now they're basically being a little bit more cautious, right? They want a place that they can reference. Could be a relevant data point, could be a comp, etc. And sellers kind of need to do the same thing too. That ability to kind of let the leash out, let the kite fly to some height that isn't substantiated is a little bit risky, and I think that's where we're seeing that too. What's wrong with condition? What are buyers afraid of with condition right now?
Well, we're seeing buyers really look at properties a little bit closer right now. They're already kind of on the fence. So what are prices doing? Am I paying too much for this piece of real estate? I really want it, but you know what? They want it to be right, and they want the condition to be right. So we're seeing more home inspections and things like that come through, and we're seeing more eyes and more attention on those home inspections and little things. They really want something that's done. And they're worried, too, about if there are repairs that need to be made or a roof that needs to be put on or something like that. are they going to be able to find someone right now to do that? And they really don't want to go through those projects.
Welcome back to normalcy, right, in a market. I mean, all this froth that was on top of that massive seller's market, it's not that the pendulum has necessarily swung back to a buyer's market, but it's a little bit more normal. So to your point, we've got more home inspections that are regular pretty much in every transaction, and then the conversation ensues. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, they see the home inspection. They feel like maybe because prices haven't come down, maybe they're still paying a nice premium. So what do they expect? They want some repairs to be done. So that's back in the equation. And by the way, what about interest rates? We've seen that all of a sudden we're seeing more and more offers that aren't cash, that are financing. And yet, how do you make that the case when interest rates are basically not coming back down? What's happening there?
Well, I think interest rates that's been a hot topic all over the place, and there's some parts of the country where interest rates really matter a lot more than they do here. At least that's what we're seeing. But when we're talking to the local lenders that are working here, they pretty much let us know that the buyer audience, they're okay with interest rates where they are right now. They've pretty much swallowed that pill,
right,
and they're just going to be like, hey, this is where interest rates are going to be for a while.
That's right. Well, compare it. I mean, we all talk about interest rates and feel like, well, I remember when I had 15% interest rate, that sort of stuff. I think the idea that the 3%, the 4%, the 5% probably not going to come back around for a couple of years. So all of a sudden we're talking to lenders and they're saying the phone's ringing, and people have swallowed that pill. And now they're trying to fine-tune that interest rate to the best program they can. So now we're seeing contracts come together, 25, 30-day financing contingency. Sellers are like, okay, we understand that, etc. That's all part and parcel of a lot of transactions, right?
Yeah, and I think when interest rates were on that steep climb, it was scary.
Yeah,
because we didn't know when it was going to stop, why it was happening so fast. It seemed like every time we turned on the TV, it was going up again. But recently, it seems to kind of have taken a back seat, and it's kind of stabilized a little bit. It's kind of just hovered in that 6 to 7% range, either side of 7%, depending on what's going on.
That's right.
And it's sat there for a while.
And people kind of, I think, in that first period of time, they thought, well, maybe it'll cycle back down. I'm going to hold off. They also thought the prices might cycle back down, but statistically, prices compared to this time last year, year over year, 1% difference to the positive, right? So prices haven't cycled down. We're pretty much in a very stable market right now, and we just need more inventory. And so we're really looking to see what happens. Here we are coming up on sort of the tail end of the big part of the rental season. We're kind of interested to see whether or not we might see some more inventory come on the market. People are looking at their ownership expenses. They're taking a look at the income they had this year, and they're thinking, prices are still staying strong. We might start seeing more inventory come on just in the next month or so.
I think that's true. I mean, the reality is this is really still a very good time to sell. Prices are still very attractive, and it's still a really good time to buy. So it's like right now is the time to get on with life and do something.
That's right. And with sellers, I think that they need to know, study the market, look at the inventory, position your property appropriately. But right now it's a good market, and goodness gracious, it's a beautiful place to be. This is where everybody wants to be. Keep in mind, the last 2 years we've had buyers that have come from 30 different states, right? It didn't used to just be like from Ohio, where I came from, or from the neighboring states, etc. People are coming from everywhere to this location, and you can see why.
It's a great place.
It is. Anyway, there we are with our update for this month. Appreciate, as always, you guys paying attention. And tell a friend to follow us on YouTube.